Hello again, and welcome back to year 4 of the Religious Education Initiative. This is week 7. We're beginning with our day 1 reading from Genesis again. Last week, we saw Jacob succeed in the task his father had given him and gain a wife from the daughters of Laban, his uncle. In fact, we saw him gain 2 wives and 2 concubines, and in the course of time gain 11 sons and 1 daughter, and a great deal of anger and tension between all of them, which will be the source of both much grief and much growth and opportunity for repentance for Jacob and all his household. But much of that is in the future. For the present, we will see Jacob prosper in his possessions and finally leave Laban's employ, all the scare quotes this time, and begin his return to the promised land, the land of his birth. So, this is verse 25 of Genesis chapter 30. When Rachel had borne Joseph, Jacob said to Laban, "Send me away, that I may go to my own home and country. Give me my wives and my children for whom I have served you, and let me go, for you know very well the service I have given you." But Laban said to him, "If you will allow me to say so, I have learned by divination that the Lord has blessed me because of you. Name your wages, and I will give it." Jacob said to him, "You yourself know how I have served you, and how your cattle have fared with me. For you had little before I came, and it has increased abundantly, and the Lord has blessed you wherever I turned. But now when shall I provide for my own household also?" Laban said, "What shall I give you?" Jacob said, "You shall not give me anything. If you will do this for me, I will again feed your flock and keep it. Let me pass through all your flock today, removing from it every speckled and spotted sheep and every black lamb, and the spotted and speckled among the goats. And such shall be my wages. So my honesty will answer for me later when you come to look into my wages with you. Every one that is not speckled and spotted among the goats and black among the lambs, if found with me, shall be counted stolen." Laban said, "Good, let it be as you have said." But that day Laban removed the male goats that were striped and spotted, and all the female goats that were speckled and spotted, every one that had white on it, and every lamb that was black, and put them in charge of his sons. And he set a distance of 3 days' journey between himself and Jacob, while Jacob was pasturing the rest of Laban's flock. Then Jacob took fresh rods of poplar and almond and plane, and peeled white streaks in them, exposing the white of the rods. He set the rods that he had peeled in front of the flocks in the troughs, that is, the watering places where the flocks came to drink. And since they bred when they came to drink, the flocks bred in front of the rods, and so the flocks produced young that were striped, speckled, and spotted. Jacob separated the lambs and set the faces of the flocks toward the striped and the completely black animals in the flock of Laban. And he put his own droves apart, and did not put them with Laban's flock. Whenever the stronger of the flock were breeding, Jacob laid the rods in the troughs before the eyes of the flock, that they might breed among the rods. But for the feebler of the flock he did not lay them there, so the feebler were Laban's, and the stronger Jacob's. Thus the man grew exceedingly rich, and had large flocks, and male and female slaves, and camels and donkeys. Now Jacob heard that the sons of Laban were saying, "Jacob has taken all that was our father's, he has gained all this wealth from what belonged to our father." And Jacob saw that Laban did not regard him as favorably as he did before. Then the Lord said to Jacob, "Return to the land of your ancestors and to your kindred, and I will be with you." So Jacob sent and called Rachel and Leah into the field where his flock was, and said to them, "I see that your father does not regard me as favorably as he did before, but the God of my father has been with me. You know that I have served your father with all my strength, yet your father has cheated me and changed my wages 10 times, but God did not permit him to harm me. If he said, 'The speckled shall be your wages,' then all the flock bore speckled. And if he said, 'The striped shall be your wages,' then all the flock bore striped. Thus God has taken away the livestock of your father and given them to me. During the mating of the flock, I once had a dream in which I looked up and saw that the male goats that leapt upon the flock were striped, speckled, and mottled. Then the angel of God said to me in the dream, 'Jacob,' and I said, 'Here I am.' And he said, 'Look up and see that all the goats that leap on the flock are striped, speckled, and mottled, for I have seen all that Laban is doing to you. I am the God of Bethel, where you have anointed a pillar and made a vow to me. Now leave this land at once and return to the land of your birth." Then Rachel and Leah answered him, "Is there any portion or inheritance left to us in our father's house? Are we not regarded by him as foreigners? For he has sold us, and he has been using up the money given for us. All the property that God has taken away from our father belongs to us and to our children. Now then, do whatever God has said to you." So Jacob arose and set his children and his wives on camels. Excuse me. And he drove away all his livestock, all the property that he had gained, the livestock in his possession that he had acquired in Padan Aram, to go something in my nose. The livestock in his possession that he had acquired in Padan Aram, to go to his father Isaac in the land of Canaan. Now, Laban had gone to shear his sheep, and Rachel stole her father's household gods. And Jacob deceived Laban the Aramean, in that he did not tell him that he intended to flee. So he fled with all that he had. Starting out, he crossed the Euphrates and set his face toward the hill country of Gilead. Seasonal allergies are no fun. So, I have heard more sermons and seen more explanations of what is supposedly going on in this chapter than perhaps any other passage in the Bible. Not because it's particularly important, but because it's confusing. We all know that what is in front of livestock when they are mating has nothing to do with what kind of with the genetics that will result in the color scheme, if you will, of the offspring. We know that very clearly, that DNA is not driven by what is seen by the eyes. And in fact, if we pay attention, we get a few different explanations of what's going on. The passage first tells us that Jacob used skill in some fashion to bring about the result that would enrich him. But he doesn't make that claim. He doesn't make that claim himself when he's speaking to his wives. He simply tells them that God has blessed him despite their father's efforts to cheat him. And I think that's important, because Jacob so far hasn't been one to give credit to God. He's undertaken to gain things by craft himself. So I did read some commentaries, and they read this passage where Jacob makes the offer. The understanding is, Laban says, what shall I pay you? But he says this because Jacob asked to leave. Jacob doesn't want to stay. But if his father-in-law is going to prevent him from leaving, then he's not going to fight him on it. But at this point, the idea is Jacob puts himself entirely in God's hands and entrusts himself to the Lord's care. Because what Jacob says is, don't give me anything. He says, let me take all the speckled and spotted sheep out from your flocks, and then after they're all gone, let any that are like that be my wages. And I think that this is the correct reading. So basically, Jacob is saying, I'm not going to ask you for anything you already have, and I'm going to even let you stack the deck against me. So take all of the critters that are already speckled and spotted and black out of the flock. And after that, we'll let genetics, take care of it. Whichever offspring from now on are born this way, those will be mine. And then he separates them out as time passes. What's interesting is in verse 34, Laban says, good idea, but he doesn't trust Jacob to remove them. He sends his own sons, or rather, he himself goes through and removes all of the speckled and spotted and black males and females from the flock. So Jacob is left, what we should understand, Jacob is left with only clean white livestock, as he begins this. And then we kind of have from verse 37 to 39 this description of the stripping of the rods and so forth. This is an explanation, and maybe it's a story that was passed down. Maybe it's a story that Jacob told his children, but I don't know how we interpret this. But basically the idea is, and somehow, despite all of that, Jacob ended up having flocks that were full of speckled and striped and spotted. We should listen to Jacob's voice over the narrator in this, I think. And Jacob says, God did not permit your father to cheat me. Everything that I have gained is God's gift to me. And if we pay attention, then this is a big change for Jacob. The one who at the very beginning of his life felt like he needed to bargain for, or trick, or cajole, or outright lie to get ahead. Now he's worked without pay, being cheated for many years, and now he entrusts the result to God, and God is faithful and enriches him. And we see too from what Rachel and Leah say, they know that their father is no good. They know that their husband has been wronged, and they know that they have been wronged. Their father has treated them like property, and he used up the money that should have been theirs. So anyway, Laban does not come off well in this, but Jacob comes across as actually trusting God, actually being faithful, and that is a good example. He is listening to the promise that the Lord has given, and he is listening to the word of the Lord calling him to leave, and he goes. He doesn't negotiate with Laban again. When God calls him and says time to leave, he up and leaves. So now we finally see Jacob, maybe for the first time, as living faithful, of worthy, we could say, of we can recognize Abraham's faith in him now. So anyway, that's it for this week, rather for this day. I'll see you all shortly for day 2. God bless you.